You can package it. I like it.
100%.
All right, I've hit the record button. Jeff, I hope this gets recorded to the cloud. And so
it will record to the cloud. I may record it as well, Kev, just to see if that works. What do we think? I won't touch it. I'll go with your recording. It says
okay. It says it's recording, so I guess we have to trust. We have to trust that. So, all right, we'll give it a couple of minutes here. Hey, thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate your time and talent today. This should be a good conversation.
Yes, Mr. Stack.
Oh, Mr. Stack has joined us.
What's happening?
Good afternoon.
You look great.
You do too.
Can you see me?
No, not even a little bit.
I wasn't allowed to. I wasn't given video privileges.
But we're still sure that you do.
Jeff, you look great too.
Thanks, buddy.
Does it feel weird that I? Yeah, never mind. No, Kevin, I'm very excited to hear from you today, buddy. Sorry I missed you yesterday.
No worries. We'll catch up.
All right.
You want to go ahead and get started, Jeff?
I want to disable Pat. That's all right.
Cool.
Beautiful. All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm really excited about today. We have got the second in a 5-week series about helping students navigate college. If you're on this call, you are probably already familiar with the mission of Sports Biz Cares and Sports Biz Camps, but it sure doesn't hurt to repeat it again. Our mission is to increase social mobility for high school students through education while expanding diversity within the sports industry. So we do that through trying to provide access to finances, social capital, resources and relationships that we've got that can help high school students be better prepared and more successful in their careers. So thank you, obviously, to all the panelists. Thank you to everybody tuning in. I'm really excited and proud to announce our moderator for the day, Kevin Lau. His full-time job is at this tiny little startup named Google. And since he randomly reached out to Pat Stack and myself, gosh, nearly 2 years ago now, Kevin.
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right.
We're heading on 2 years. Kevin has become an integral part of what we do here. He served as our inaugural keynote speaker for the 2019 camps. He is part of our advisory council that helps guide us forward as our organization continues to grow. He is a market leader for Detroit, which I'm sure he will bring up Detroit again and again and again. And each and every day earns his daily status as our most passionate and most committed external supporter. So really excited to turn it over to Kevin today. We've assembled a great group of both old and new friends, and really have some great and varying different perspectives on, what happens when you get to school. Do you need to study sports? Do you not need to study sports? So really excited to hear from everybody, and really excited to turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Kevin Lau.
Mr. Longo, thanks so much for the time. And to those of you watching the recording or watching this live, thank you so much for joining us. As mentioned, my name is Kevin Lau, market leader for our Detroit Sports Biz Camps group in my hometown of Michigan. Quick plug here. We've got a great group in Detroit representing Nike, Zenith, Detroit Football Lions. Yes, I'm a fan, Detroit Football Lions. And we're all looking forward to one day leading an in-person camp in the future, working with local area major sports teams and those high school organizations. So if you're watching this and you're a potential partner or sponsor or possibly someone that wants to get involved, don't hesitate to email me. This is my email address. It's kevin@sportsbizcamps.com, and we'll make sure that you have that information as needed. With that, I am really excited to lead today's episode. part 2 of a 5-part episode series occurring each Thursday of the month of October, focusing on helping high school and college students progress from the first step of, hey, okay, I think I want to go to college, to, all right, I've graduated. Now what do I do? And today, I've got some amazing folks on the call to provide perspectives on the topic of, okay, I'm in college. What do I do here? What do I study? Which is actually more challenging than it sounds. Today, my role is to moderate, keep us on track, keep us on time, and pull that experience out of each of one of our panelists so that each of you watching this live or again on the YouTube recording can action these lessons that are learned to make your path and your college experience just a little bit easier to navigate and honestly enjoy. If I think back to my experiences back at Wayne State University, my hometown there, I had no idea what I was doing in freshman year. I had no idea. I was riding the tide to finding my way, and something like this would have been awesome to have. And so, with that said, I'm going to turn it over for some quick introductions here, and I pulled together just a quick slide to kind of keep us on point here. So these are the folks that are joining us here. I'm presenting my screen. Hopefully, those of you watching this can see it. Fantastic. And so we're going to go through a kind of roundtable, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of these folks to provide their name, their hometown, and maybe their current location if it's different. And then that question there, like, hey, what did you want to study, and what did you end up majoring in when you were in college? And so with that, first, I'm going to go to Anne. Anne, go ahead and unmute and tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So thank you so much for having me today. So my name is Ann Bolby. I actually am originally from a very, very small town in northern Michigan called Caseville. So I live just outside of Detroit now. So I don't live there anymore. My family's still there though. But as far as what I wanted to study, I did kind of have an early inkling that I wanted to do something sports related. So I attended the University of Michigan for undergrad, and they have a sports management program under the School of Kinesiology. So I did major in sports management while I was at U of M and loved it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne, for being here. Zach, you're up next.
Thanks, man, for having me on. Super happy to be here. So my name's Zach Warren. I'm from a suburb of Detroit, West Bloomfield, Michigan. And right now living like kind of closer to Detroit, going to Wayne State University. I went to undergrad at Michigan State University though. And when I started there, I actually thought I was going to be a sports doctor. That switched over to thinking I was going to be a sports lawyer. I actually finished my undergrad degree with a psychology degree. So then I thought I was going to be a sports psychologist. And now I'm getting my MBA at Wayne State in sport and entertainment management, my MBA, which is Master's in Business Administration. But yeah, thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Zach. Really appreciate you being here. Kenya, go for it.
Yeah, thanks for having me as well. Super excited to be here and to be able to kind of try to give my insight on things. So I'm Kenya Jones. I'm from a small, very small 2-stoplight town outside of Winston-Salem called Walnut Cove. And I'm currently residing in Chapel Hill. I'm a senior at UNC. When I first got to Carolina, I thought that I was going to major in business and ended up finding my home in exercise sports science with a concentration in sports administration.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenya, for being here. And lastly, Dr. G.
All right, thank you. Super excited to spend the time with you all. My name is Scott Grant. I'm originally from, again, a small town in Ohio, Continental. I actually always knew I wanted to do something intersecting education and athletics. My parents were both teachers. My dad was a coach, so I grew up pretty much in a classroom and, in athletic facilities. So I I did my undergrad actually in education, have a teaching degree. I then stayed and worked as a graduate assistant in the athletic department and did my MBA with a concentration in sport management. And then I went back later on when I was a high school athletic director and did my doctorate in educational leadership, but more in sport policy. So most of my research is around interscholastic athletics. So everything has always been at that intersection of education and athletics. Just the application has always been different. Currently live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and work at the University of North Carolina as ops, outreach, and leadership development in the athletics department.
Fantastic. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We'll get back to having just regular conversations here. For folks of you that joined us last week, the episode and the tone of that talk was really around, if I want to go to college, what do I do to get there, right? Like what are the steps to take? And today, and again, second part of a 5-part series here in October is going to be focused on, okay, I'm in college. I made a decision to go, I'm in. What do I do now? And the full scope of the next 51 minutes will be related specifically on that topic. And we've discussed some of this in a pre-call yesterday, but I'm really excited to hear the thoughts and experiences from each of the panelists that have joined us here today. And so with that said, we'll jump in. Dr. Scott, we're going to start with you first. So looking at your experience on LinkedIn, and you have a great TED Talk, by the way. It's a plug there. We're going to make sure that that's available for you all in the chat. If Jeff, you want to chime that in there, and watch it after this webinar, not now. Like watch it. You're here for this, so watch it later. So you've worked and advised undergrads that didn't major in a sports track, that didn't start off knowing that they were in sports, myself included. I was a dance major. Like full disclosure, I was a dance major when I first started, and realized I just wasn't a great dancer. So with that said, over your experience, what are some effective exercises that you'd recommend to help guide a potential career path, whether that's in sports or in otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I spent time as a high school teacher, and then I was a college professor for the last 7 years before I moved into this role. And even at both levels, kids didn't necessarily know what they wanted to do, right? They had an idea. And one of the biggest things I always require them to do is we do skill assessments. So I always tell people, one of the most important skills that I gained from being a junior in high school and taking desktop publishing. I learned Photoshop, and it's helped me throughout my entire career. So we would always go through, and I would tell kids, okay, pull 5 different job descriptions of jobs and fields that you think you might be interested in. And then we'd go to the KSA part, so knowledge, skills, and abilities, and say, okay, what do we have? What are we missing? And then we would build strategic plans on how to figure out how to piece those things together. So if I'm meeting with a kid who's a major in sport management, but he wants to go in marketing, and he doesn't have any graphic design skills, he doesn't have any sales experience, he doesn't have any pieces that we know are going to be part of marketing elements for jobs that he wants, we have to figure out a way to build those. It could be through a class that they need to take. It could be being part of a group on campus. And there's so many strategy components that they have to build into that when you're looking at it. Too often it's like, I'm going to major in this, but let's face it. We all know the question you're going to get is, what's your value? What value do you bring to my organization? If somebody says, oh, I majored in sport management, I majored in marketing, I don't care what it is, they're going to be great. So did everybody else, right? They want to know the value that you brought and the key skills that differentiate you. So we always built that strategic plan on the front end, and it was super fun because you could say, oh, I need this class because it aligns with this, what they're asking. And even if you didn't know specifically, it was a way to help really define what that next year or 2 of classes might look like to really help.
No, that's great. And I really like that exercise of, and that's very applicable into the business world right now. It's like, hey, where do you want to be? Like, where are you at right now? Then what's that stuff in the middle? Like, what does that look like? And complete transparency for those of you watching this, like, it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event where you do that and you're set for your entire career. It's a process of iteration, like failing sometimes, but then being able to recalibrate and try again. And if we think about sports as a high level like theme of these talks, what I love about sports is that it does build resiliency. It does build that ability to change course and modify as necessary, but also set the target, set the goal, and understand what you need to do from that vantage point. Do any of the panelists want to add on to Dr. G's point here? We're good. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'm going to flip it over to Kenya. Now, Kenya, you're in it. You're a senior over at UNC, right? Like you're in it. You're probably going through some of the things that Dr. G just mentioned, and so let me ask you this. How do you know that you're on the right track? And more importantly, like what resources do you have available to kind of help you ensure that you stay within those guidelines to get you to where you want to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the most important things, like when you first get to college, is that you have to be proactive in a sense, and find those resources. People might tell you about some things, but it's really, you have to make some sort of initiative. So here at Carolina, we have something over in Haynes Hall. It's like a career center. And there's a website that you can kind of go to as well. And you also have an assigned academic advisor, but also just finding a professor. You don't even have to go to those places, even though they're offered. You just find a professor that you feel like is on that path or has been down that path where you're looking to go to. Just go sit and talk to them. If you go and sit and talk to them, they can kind of pinpoint like where you're at and kind of give suggestions. Say, hey, okay, maybe think about doing this, or have you done this? Just kind of give you some different insight on what you can do to kind of, I guess, further yourself along the path. I know for me, when I first got to Carolina, I thought I was going to do business. I had like separate resources in the business school, but I also wanted insight from outside of the business school. So I kind of did that on my own. I went to some of my other professors that weren't in the field of business. I had like a history class, and I was talking to my history professor just about like, okay, this is what I kind of think I want to do. Like, what is your insight? And then of course, like just sat down and like Dr. Grant said, just kind of assessing where you're at with your skills, and then looking for as many different resources and networks to kind of make sure that you're in the right path, but also making sure it's your path and not something that you're kind of copying from someone else. So it's all really fitted to yourself, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that answer. And I echo a lot of what you said about being proactive. And then I think finding a professor, like for some of my professors that will probably watch this recording, like I actually still talk to them. I have now been, many, many moons removed from undergrad, but I've been able to build some of those relationships. Really quickly, can I ask Dr. Grant, can I just flip it over to you really quickly? How early should a student, reach out to a career center or to a professor? Do you advise that on day one? Do you advise that maybe after the first semester? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm always a big believer in day one, partially because number one, the 4 years flies, right? And I tell all the students the 4 years is going to fly. The relationship piece, and we all know how important the relationship piece is to this, right? So many times I had 80 advisees. So many times I would get emails from people external or companies, and they say, hey, do you have any kids that are really good at this? We'd really like to have them do a project, et cetera. And the ones who had built relationships, I mean, for better or worse, let's face it, are the ones that I fired those emails to, the ones that I knew, the ones that came up after class, the ones that would come to my office hours and just learn more about it. Here's what I think I want to do. Too often, I think kids or just people in general forget how impactful like that coffee time might be, right? And just spending a little time getting to know them, where they're from, finding connections, because that is a skill on itself. I mean, I always thought there was an 18-month plan when it got down to 18 months right before graduation, right? You're researching people, you're sending out coffee times. I used to send kids to Columbus who weren't actually going to Columbus to have coffee with somebody they could get a meeting with, just so they could start to build the connections and learn more about those companies, because there's so many applications of these different things that people want to do. And you got to do as much research as possible. And even though we tell students to do that, I would usually say there's 3 or 4 a class that would do it. I mean, 3 or 4 a total class, not just one setting of 30. I mean, I'm talking 3 or 4 of 300 kids that are going to put in the time to come and just say hi and build a relationship. But those ones can move faster through the process so much. I mean, just because they have the relationships on the back end. And I always tell everybody, my junior year, when I really decided I wanted to be a GA, I volunteered. I reached out to the intramural director. I volunteered to input intramural scores on Thursday mornings for an hour. That intramural director was best friends with the guy that I ended up being a GA for. Like, I only met them in the cafeteria because one time he's like, hey, let's go have lunch. Like, I literally just went and entered scores, right? So the relationship piece is so important, just as it is asking questions and starting to focus on yourself. So I think it starts from day one. You can do that. You're going to be way ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this could be just me, but I found it intimidating. Like you just mentioned, three or four folks out of a massive group of people actually are taking the time to, as Kenya said, be proactive and find a professor. Like it is intimidating, but I will remind, all of us here, not just in a academic sense, but humans by nature are predispositioned to help other people. Like that's kind of how we're built, right? And when you ask somebody to help you, more often than not, they're going to give you that opportunity. And so, really, really good points, Kenya and Dr. Grant. Appreciate it.
And Kevin, I think one thing people and students in general, like people who end up working in higher ed that want to be professors and want to be advisors, like they're there for a reason, right? They're there because they want you to go. Like I don't want to just have a class of 30 and then never talk to these kids ever again, other than that class of 30. Like I want you coming to my office. That's why I did this, right? Those people want to be mentors and engage and help figure out how to, because there's nothing better than watching those kids change over those 4 years and walk away and say, you know what, like they found themselves. And that's amazing. That's amazing. So even though it's intimidating, unbelievably, those people are there for them, and they really need to take advantage of that right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Along those lines, Anne, I'm going to throw this next question to you. So you've had 2 stints with the 11-time Stanley Cup champion Detroit Red Wings, downtown Detroit, no big deal. And working at the foundation and at the community relations department. But before you graduated the University of Michigan back in 2011, how did you determine that you actually wanted to work in the area of community relations? Did you do some of the things that Kenya and Dr. Scott Grant mentioned just a moment ago?
Right. It's so funny just kind of us chatting about this the last couple of days, how much I'm reflecting on.
I know.
And where I got to where I was, and just how little things can make such a big difference. And to Kenya's point about taking initiative, when I was in college, I want to say it was maybe my sophomore year, I participated in the Relay for Life on campus. And so I started thinking like, wow, that's really neat, And so I just reached out to a woman who was like the school liaison and helped the University of Michigan from like the local American Cancer Society chapter. And she happened to run a program they had called Coaches vs. Cancer. And she was like, actually, we've been looking to expand this. You do sport management. Do you want to help? So I had an internship with the American Cancer Society working with their Coaches vs. Cancer program. And once I saw that, I mean, it was game over. I thought like, this is somebody's job that they get to do this stuff. And so that kind of really set me on the path for that. And I think too, for me, it was really seeing kind of what I didn't like. So I was doing the sports management course, but I knew taking like the sports econ class, I didn't really like it that much. Or sitting in my accounting class, I was like, I don't really care the time value of money here, but I want to help with this stuff. So it did become kind of a narrow focus for me because I started to figure out what I didn't like just as much as the stuff that I was starting to gravitate towards. So then it just kind of snowballed from there, and I saw an opening with the Detroit Red Wings, with the Red Wings Foundation, took that job. It was only seasonal, and that was a bummer afterwards, having to leave for a summer, or for a season, I should say. Tried something new, didn't like that. And then I actually got a call from a fellow coworker who worked in the community relations department, saw my hard work, got to know her while I was there. And she reached out to me and said that there was an opening in the community relations department, and she wanted me to work for her. So that's kind of how I became my second stint with the Red Wings and became the community relations manager for roughly about the next 5 years or so. So it really it's just kind of taking those, opportunities, meeting those people. You just never know when folks and relationships are going to resurface in your life.
Yeah. You're bringing up there's some themes that are coming up here, and I promise you all, we didn't really rehearse this before we jumped on this webinar, but there's some good questions, like good thoughts here about, your relationships, about going out of your way to meet someone, which again can be intimidating, but again, people are predispositioned to help each other. And I think, you know, and your experience kind of like personifies that component. You actually also mentioned something that we should probably talk just a little bit more about here just shortly. I want to double click into what you said about, you know, when you're doing something that you don't like, you kind of find out the things you do like.
Yeah.
Right. What can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I thought, you know, for me, after that first time I left with the Red Wings, I took a job with the Boy Scouts of America in the Detroit chapter. And I thought, cool, volunteerism, I might like that. But I found out it just wasn't for me for a lot of various different reasons. But at the same time, I was able to still learn so much there. So I think it really kind of goes back to Dr. Grant talking about the skills. You know, I was doing a lot of networking. I was working with volunteers and building volunteer relationships. I was doing a lot of event planning and planning these events all around the region to help with things. And so then when I got that call for the community relations job, I mean, it was an easy fit. That's exactly what I did in that role, was planning these events, working with these community liaisons, working with fans to bring that engagement. So I think really I learned that that organization wasn't a fit for me. A lot of, you know, other things maybe weren't a fit, but it was still building my skill set to make me marketable and learn a lot, even while I wasn't enjoying it as much as my next move.
Yeah. And you're right. Like every job, or every even part-time job or temporary job or volunteer effort, regardless if it's good or bad, you still get something. You get some sort of experience,
Absolutely.
right? Like, you know, I mentioned to you all yesterday in the prep that I was the worst grocery bagger in the history of grocery baggers. And then I went on to work at a women's clothing store, folding clothes. And it was then that I saw that, hey, look, I don't see myself working in retail for my whole life, but I found out that I loved working with people and I loved working with numbers, you know, and to get that kind of experience through college was, you know, in hindsight, again, looking back, and, you know, I didn't realize that would be skills that I would take that would support me throughout my entire career. Next question here is for Zach. You've been patiently waiting in the background there, Zach. I appreciate your patience. Now, we've talked a lot.
Of course.
We've talked a lot about, you know, majors and like course selection and like reaching out to folks to kind of help guide the path there. But, you know, and that's very important. However, as, you know, president of the Sports and Entertainment Business Association at Wayne State University, what are your thoughts about someone joining clubs and student organizations? When should students do that? Is that also on day one, like what Dr. G kind of mentioned here? Is that something that you did later on in your collegiate career?
So for me, looking back at undergrad, I kind of wish I did that kind of right off the bat. There are a ton of school org meetings that are happening. You just kind of got to keep your eye out for emails, and maybe as teachers, maybe as classmates. This year, you know, it's different than all the other years because everyone's online. So saying an email to a random classmate is not weird. I promise you, people are doing it all the time. Sending an email to a teacher that you just met is not weird either. So I'd recommend doing that and just asking them, what are the school orgs out there? I'm sure there's a website. I know we have a website at Wayne State. So I'm assuming most schools probably do, that have a full list of every student org out there. Contact information is usually included with that as well. So it's really easy to talk to people in those leadership positions at those student orgs and kind of figure out what the student orgs are all about. You know, hopping in and taking a leadership role at a student org from an undergrad's perspective is a great way to find opportunities in industries you're interested in. You know, if you want to become more involved with people that are interested in the things you're interested in, like for example, sports entertainment, I'm sure you could find a club with a bunch of people your age, freshmen, sophomores that are interested in those things. But otherwise, you know, if you don't want a leadership role and you're just interested in just seeing what's out there, I'm sure this year student orgs, just like ours, are very enthusiastic about trying to get in contact with people. So I would recommend doing it now. I mean, like I said, weird year. So you might as well try and communicate with other people with like-minded interests that are out there. And they're definitely waiting and excited to talk to everyone. So um, there's got to be a website for you to find out. Just like everyone else has said, I feel like all of college and kind of all of, the process of finding your career is talking with people, reaching out. Once you do it a few times, it's a little bit less scary than the first times, and you get used to it. Yeah, I would do it early. I didn't. I wish I did. I kind of did it the second half of undergrad. Um, if I had done
Gotcha.
it a little, if I had done it a little bit earlier, maybe I would have not switched majors 4 times and done 5 different jobs. But like, we were just talking about a second ago, kind of doing these things that you don't like, or you didn't realize you didn't like until after you did them, or what you might think as failures at the time actually lead you towards the place where you're supposed to be. So I guess one thing that I just wanted to add on to what we were saying before is failure is actually really good, if you look at it in the right way. It's your perspective that matters. So um, for all of the undergrad students on here, you should be really excited to look into clubs or make relationships with everyone at school. Take advantage of things being online right now, because people are trying to meet people. People are trying to meet people right now. People are trying to connect. So, yeah.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Something that I haven't actually thought about was like the art of the introduction, which I think some of us have touched base on, being able to build relationships early on in your undergrad career. But that doesn't stop there. Like just the other 2 weeks ago, I cold emailed the head of sports partnerships at Google, because in my world, my dream world, tech and sports are together. And I sent an email, didn't hear back. 2 weeks passed. I bumped it up saying, "Hey, I think this may have got caught in your email inbox. Just bumping this up just in case." Immediate response: "I would love to talk with you." We had to talk yesterday, and it turned out to be a very, very meaningful conversation for me, for my own career path. So
Yeah.
we could probably do a full webinar on the art of the cold email. Jeff, I think you may have the email that I sent you back in the day with that. And so there is an art to it, and obviously you want to be able to stand out. Kenya, I want to follow up on what Zach just said with a question on your end. And apologies, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put you front street here. I'm going to ping the group your LinkedIn profile. We just got connected on LinkedIn yesterday, so this is kind of a really new relationship for me and for you. Going to what Zach said about getting involved and like reaching out to people and balancing coursework and balancing extracurriculars. I mean, you've done a lot here. This is, if I had the LinkedIn profile that you do right now when I was your age, I would be much better, way better off, I promise you. Can you give us like 1 or 2 things you do to kind of keep it all like together and not like overstretch yourself and still building time for studies? Like, how do you do all that?
That's a great question. I think for me, you have to have a balance, right? So some of the activities you do might be more, I guess, like socially kind of centered, and other things are like really like business centered. But whether or not like what the role is and whatever you're a part of, it has to be fun, right? Like you don't want to be a part of an organization where it really feels like a chore. So whatever I do, I want it to be fun, but I also want it to relate to myself. So with all the organizations or things I've been a part of, like I've been a part of club basketball since my sophomore year. While I was still interested in business, I did like a undergraduate business mentorship. And just like the little volunteering things that I decided to do were things that I was passionate about. So I kind of saw it as an escape from like just the hard coursework. But at the same time, while it was an escape and it was enjoyable, it was also impactful to whatever it was that I wanted to do. And in those organizations, I kind of looked for people that were similar to what I was trying to accomplish. So, I'd be like, hey, like, what classes are you in? Because maybe that could help me with my coursework. And then not only are we friends, but we could be classmates and just be resources to each other. And then, of course, like planning. having the opportunity to do those extracurriculars, but not in a sense, like you said, stretching yourself, knowing what your limits are, but finding ways that you could be creative with your time while you're a part of those organizations. It could really serve as like a combo, like a 2-in-1 type thing. So while it is entertainment, it's fun, a lot of times it also does serve the purpose of like helping you with your studies to make that easier, or, you know, just kind of decreasing the workload and making sure that you're getting that variety of experience, so you're not just drilled in on your coursework and you're making it so much harder on yourself. So I think it's just really finding a balance, making sure it aligns with your passions, and seeing what the organization or what the extracurriculars can add to your experiences rather than like just the sole purpose of it. So.
Yeah, no, that's a phenomenal question. And hey, I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to take away the value of structured education. Like that is definitely not what this is about. This is about being able to expand on those lessons that you do learn in the classroom and apply that, you know, with a group of people. And I love what you said about, you know, keeping it fun. You know, I think, you know, college is it is fun. You get to meet a lot of really cool people. You know, you have a kind of a level of independence that maybe you didn't have, you know, in high school, and that's great. But more importantly, I think you are in some ways a product of this people that you spend the most time with. And so if you're spending time in the classroom, again, working in groups, that's fantastic. But then if you're able to expand that network and work on something that you're passionate about, that you find fun, you'll find folks that can help guide your career in some way, shape, or form. He's not on this. I'll send this to him afterwards. But my former college roommate, Francesco Esposito, works at Microsoft. He coached me for my Google interview, and I wouldn't have met him if I didn't join a student organization. We actually never had a class together, and if I didn't have that relationship, I don't know what I would have done. Right. So, Frank, if you're watching this, thank you so much. I appreciate you, buddy. Cool. With that said, it is 9:36 a.m. here on the Pacific Coast. It's 12:36 p.m. on the East Coast. We have a fun little exercise here. Appreciate everybody's responses to those questions. I think that's really good stuff there. You can't pay for that stuff. That's really good. So we're going to do a quick exercise. We're going to play a little fact or fiction. I've asked the panelists to prepare some items on their end. So if you get that out for me, that'd be fantastic. I have 3 questions, and I want you to just show if you feel that statement is fact or if that statement is fiction, and then we'll open it up for open discussion on that front. So panelists, are you ready? Awesome. The double thumbs up is key, Dr. G. Oh, there he goes. There we go. Awesome. All right. First question. What you study in college is the most important decision of your career? All right. We seem to have somewhat consensus there. Does anybody want to chime in on what that is? Dr. G, go for it.
Yeah, so I used to tell a lot of my students that unless you're moving into a program that has some sort of certification, right? Like if you want to be a teacher, you know that you're going to need a teaching degree. If you're going to be a doctor, you know that you're going to have to go to med school. There are certain positions that you have to have a certain major, right? For the other ones, you're really looking at application of what it is that you're trying to learn throughout. And to kind of piggyback on what Kenny and Zach said, right? Like I always used to talk about like the power of the triangle, right? They say it's the strongest shape in existence, whatever. So I would say you got to hit 3 pieces. You need to do well in your classes, and you need to develop your knowledge, skills, and abilities in those pieces. You need to be engaged in some sort of campus element, and then you need to have experiential learning. And if you had all 3 of those pieces, it's extremely beneficial. And that was more important than anything about I'm an accounting major and I only have accounting internships. You got to do other things. And a lot of times what they're saying is you have power in numbers. So by joining these groups and doing these other things, it adds so much value to whatever your major is going to be, because you're going to talk about those, not, man, I had a 3.9 sport management degree. That's great. That's one piece of the triangle, right? What are the other 2 pieces that are literally going to add so much value that gets you to that point where you need to be?
Yeah, no, I echo that. I sit on some hiring committees at Google. And so I've seen many resumes. And there's a lot of folks that they excel so much on the classes part. They are top of their class. There's no question about the intelligence. The piece that's typically missing is like, how do you interact with others? What projects or initiatives have you led? What have you done for yourself and your community? Right. And so those are some things that truly add value. And I love that analogy of the triangle. It's the first time I'm hearing that.
Yes, the application part is so important, and everything that every panelist has said. It's just key, because it's the major and the classes are just one small part. And I used to tell students all the time, if you start to identify areas that you really want to be in, go sit with an advisor, say, here's what I want my major to look like, right? Like I've written so many individualized majors of all kinds of different elements that coincided once people figured out, like, here's where I kind of want to be. Because a lot of times it takes colleges a long time to change curriculum, and sometimes it doesn't fit specifically for every area. And too often kids would just say, oh, well, that's it, lockstep. Not necessarily, right? You can substitute classes a lot of times. You can add different pieces, but all of these elements get you closer to the understanding of being able to do that, and then it's game on.
No, absolutely. Go ahead, Kenya.
Yeah, and to the point of what Dr. Grant said, when I found out that I wanted to do sports administration, there was still a piece that I thought was kind of missing. So, I just kept digging around, everything that our school had to offer. And I found, like, the end, or I guess maybe the beginning of my junior year, that we had a coaching minor. And that was the piece that I felt like was, like, really missing from my education, something that could really help me give back to the community in the future, but also improve my own, like, leadership, communication skills, managerial skills, all of that. So just being able to kind of see that while it doesn't matter, like what you kind of study, you just have to, I guess, figure it out what you want to do. And whatever it is you want to do, like, there are pieces that can help you get there. It doesn't have to be one specific path, because if I wouldn't have known that, I would have just been like, okay, well, we're going to figure it out. I'm going to go with the sport admin and hopefully, find the coaching. But I was able to just kind of just say, like, there's more than one way, just because you start one path doesn't mean that you can't find your way to, like, what you want to do. So just kind of keeping that open mind and knowing that you're not stuck in whatever it is you decide in those 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can also, like, really just help your mindset for whatever it is you want to accomplish.
That's a great point. All right, next question here. Fact or fiction? You need to study sports management in order to work in the sports industry. A little bit of a consensus there too. Anybody want to chime in on that question?
Yeah, I think back to my time in my undergrad and my classmates in my sport management degree, and they're doing all sorts of stuff. I mean, they're accountants, they're lawyers, some of them do work in sports. I mean, they're journalists, they do all sorts of things. And then I look at my colleagues at the Red Wings. I mean, they have communications degrees, marketing degrees. I mean, all, runs the gamut. They've got crazy degrees that, you wonder how they got there, but they did. And so I think it's important to not pigeonhole yourself one way or the other. It's, if you decide way later in life that you want to do sports, do it. If you know right away you want to do sports and you end up changing your mind, that's okay too. So just looking at both aspects, definitely you can do it either way. So
yeah, and it reminds. Zach, go ahead. I was going to kick it over to you, anyways.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So I had an internship experience in Cleveland with the Cavaliers, where I got to shadow people from every department there. And I don't know if you guys know this, but Cleveland has, like, maybe one of the highest number of employees in the NBA, or maybe any of the leagues. They have like 400 or 500 employees there. So from talking with different people in different departments every day, I kind of got the picture that everyone's route's really different. So for example, like kind of going off of like just random off the top of my head, this guy, Chris in marketing, had a job in marketing outside of sports for 5 years, 6 years. Didn't realize that his, job that he was doing at that point would completely transfer over to the sports world, found a, application for the Cavs job online, applied and got in. I mean, everyone's route's different. So just going off of your major doesn't really matter because people, come from different industries all the time. I would say, more than half the employees weren't sports management majors there. They were coming from every which way. So if you're interested in sports, it doesn't mean you have to be a sport management major. You can be, but it's not a requirement in any way, shape, or form to end up working in the industry. So.
Yeah, and someone could even argue that, if you have a specialty, like deep degree in like accounting or like finance or something like that, that's actually could be worth more, to the organization instead of maybe a general sports management degree. And that the presence of you even having a sports management degree doesn't actually guarantee you anything, and so there's also that component, there's there as well.
For sure.
I think, and again, I think no matter what your degree is in, if you can articulate that value, I was a high school history teacher, right? I taught American history and sociology for 5 years, did my MBA knowing I wanted to be an AD, but didn't want to be a principal, right? Like I wanted to learn the business side, wanted to do that. There's the application of that is very, very different.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Last question, fact or fiction question. It's never too early to ask for help and guidance. It's never too early to ask for help and guidance. I think this is a theme that most of us talked about today. People sometimes think of asking for help as a sign of weakness. I see it as a sign of strength. It's knowing what you don't have, knowing what you do have, and being able to find resources and people to help you to fill that gap. Any thoughts on that before we transition to the closing?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you never know who you're talking to until you know them. You don't know who they know. You don't know how they can help you or if they will help you. So I know, like I kind of mentioned earlier, the first or second time of reaching out to people for the first time in college might feel kind of weird and you might be a little nervous. But it's something you should try and see what happens and what comes of it, because you really never know. If I wouldn't have done it, I probably wouldn't have joined the fraternity that I joined and some school organizations that I did, which have led me to, some of my best friends and have pushed me, motivated me to do some of the things in the school I'm doing right now after, getting my graduate degree. So just take some risks right now, freshman, sophomore year, do whatever you can. I know it's easier to say than to do it, but the first or second time is really the hardest part. And then after that, you're kind of smooth sailing, and you never know you never know what people, who they are. You don't. So you might as well just try it first, second time. And
yeah. What it can't hurt. Right. And so, Dr. G, you wanted to chime in?
Yeah, no. And I think if people are genuine, and I always tell a quick story, 10 seconds, but I was a high school golf coach, 23 years old, didn't know what I was doing, reached out to a guy that graduated from that high school who ran camps at a big Division I institution, said, hey, can I come for the week and spend time and just learn? I took a yellow pad of paper, I followed him around, etc. One of the counselors there who was just graduating college is really the reason why I'm here in my role right now. We built a relationship over the last 10 years. I consulted with them, etc. But there was no way of knowing that. And those people everybody has that story, those success stories that if you become a little bit more vulnerable, but you do it with just a genuine approach, say, hey, I'm just trying to learn. If someone says, no, I don't want you around because I don't want to help you, then that's not for you. Like, it's not for you, and that's okay. Then you move on to the next people, because people love helping when they're truly passionate about a specific area. And I just think it's something, the quicker you can do that, the faster you're going to move.
Yeah. And, I'll wrap that last part up. It's, it is scary, right? To ask for help, but if you do it in a way, and I think you put it perfectly. It's like, you want to do it in a way that's genuine and authentic. You want to, there's a part of it where it's like, if you're just taking, if you're just taking all the time, like, hey, can you help me? Hey, help me with this, just to get to the next step. That's not what we're saying here. We're saying, understand where you are, where you want to be, what you currently, what your current situation is, and practically find someone and have a reason to reach out to them. I'm humbled that I get a lot of LinkedIn requests. And to bring this into practicality, I get a lot of LinkedIn requests, which is great. Being part of this organization, being a part of the organization that I work for full time, lends me those opportunities. But often they come without a note. They're just a blind request, and like, hey, I would love to like connect with you, but I don't know what's your angle here, like what's going on here. And so it's so important to kind of like ensure that if you're going to reach out to somebody, like, know what that intention is and help them help you in that regard. We've got 11 minutes left in this. I can't believe it's already almost at the top of the next hour. I appreciate all the panelists being here. It's been great to talk to you all. Last question for the group. We're going to go round robin on this front. The question is, if you could get in front of a high school student about to start college, or maybe a college freshman who's just starting to choose their classes, what one tip or one piece of advice would you provide to them? And with that said, I'm going to ask Anne to answer that first.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in on your point there too, Kevin, because similar to you, going back, I feel like I'm in the presidential debate. I'm going to answer your other question.
Too soon, still too soon, but it's fine.
Yeah, sorry. But I just kind of being on the receiving end of getting requests similar like you were touching on. I always made time to respond to people that personally reached out to me, always, because it was very humbling, especially the first few that I got, that somebody reached out and they wanted to hear how I got to where I was. And I could be juggling 3 events at work, and we work till 11, 12 p.m. sometimes, but I always made time to respond to those personal requests because you're right. I think people want to help people, and there's really something to be said for that. So I really encourage folks to do that. And maybe that will be my answer to the income. But I think it really is, just like it's okay to be a little bit afraid, but at the end of the day, you kind of just have to do it. And it's okay to not fully know to have it all figured out quite yet. You're going to learn so much. And I don't think you need to put so much pressure on yourself to be able to say to your relatives and your classmates what you're going to even major in, what you're going to graduate with, and then what your career is going to be. Because my uncle always likes to say, he says, I'm 60 years old and I'm still figuring out what I want to do for my career. So it's all right. Just don't put that pressure on yourself. Great
words. I had a unreasonable amount of pressure, in senior and freshman year. And so that's great advice. Kenya, you're on the tail end of your studies there. What advice would you give maybe your younger self, or just to maybe a high school student or a freshman? Kenya?
Okay, got you. My internet was going in and out. I would say the biggest thing is just to not success watch. And I was in that position. It's hard when you're trying to put yourself into a new environment. You want to make friends, you want to relate to people. And you don't want to fail. Like, you want to do the best that you can. So it gets really easy, especially with social media as it is now. It gets so easy to get wrapped into what everyone else is doing. And, people will flash a GPA, and that's fine. You can be proud of that. But you just have to be sound in who you are and what you want to do, and have your sights on your goals, and be confident in yourself. Know that your time is coming. Keep doing what you're supposed to do. Keep preparing, keep reaching out, and your time will come. I'm a product of that. I had to set aside the negative thoughts and just know that I was doing everything I could, and eventually I was going to get my opportunity. So I would just say, be confident in who you are, in your abilities. Always showcase the best of yourself, and don't let what other people's success, don't let their success take away from what's coming for you. Be proud, be happy for them, be supportive of them, but also know that you have your success coming too. So just don't get discouraged and keep going.
Yeah. That success watch. I'm stealing that because I'm guilty of doing that, as well. Even at Google. I mean, you're surrounded by very intelligent and humble people. It's easy to take a look at their success and go, why am I not seeing that? It's a good reminder for all of us. And I think it's much easier to succeed when you want others to succeed as well. So I think there's also that component. Zach, what's your answer on the tip here for a high school student or a college freshman?
For sure. Changing environments from kind of where you grew up in high school, going to college, kind of adding on to what everyone just said a second ago, only compare yourself to yourself, like in everything you do. Take it one day at a time. Today's today. Let's crush it today. Let's have a great day today, and tomorrow's tomorrow. Obviously, you have an agenda and you plan out things and whatnot, but take everything with a grain of salt. Wins and losses, be super happy for a day and then get back to it. Losses, try and take it with a good perspective. Nothing at this point of your life is going to be the end all be all. Whether it's a bad decision or, something super amazing, just enjoy life, just be happy and try and strive for positive things for yourself. Whether it's career, relationships, whatever. Just don't think twice about things and go with your gut. This is supposed to be a fun part of your life where you experience new things. So take risks, try new things that you might not have thought you liked, whether it's food or classes. You don't know what you like. I know what I like, but I don't know everything that I like. I'm still trying new things every day. I think everyone here is. So
yeah.
It's just day by day, putting yourself out there for yourself, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up something about, keep your head up, especially during these times where it can be challenging, where you really need to reach into the well and find your motivation and find your resiliency. And so, these are great thoughts for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just every day is different too. Every day is exciting. So try to wake up and today's a good day, right? That's what it's got to be.
Absolutely. I love that mentality. Dr. G, I'll end it with your note here. What one piece of advice, I know you've you've dropped a lot of golden nuggets today. What one piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing, and I used to tell parents this a lot when I would meet with them and they say, oh, what's the job outlook or what's the percentage? And I would always tell them, between the ages of 18 to when they graduate at 22, it is the most unbelievable transformation of people I've ever seen in my entire life, right? When you graduate high school and you come into college, and when you graduate college, you are completely different. So saying at 18, I'm going to do this, right? And even saying at 22, and you have to be okay to change. You have to be okay to adapt and pivot. You have to know what you value and really start to get clear on who you want to be as a person, because the application of that and whatever it is that you decide you want to do as some sort of career is going to change and shift for a long period of time. And I graduated college, I got engaged, I had 3 job offers at places I really wanted to go. And my wife looked at me and go, I'm not moving there. Right. And it's like, oh, okay, pivot time. Right. And part of that too is we pivoted, we figured it out. I had the same calling of values and how I wanted to impact people. It was just a different application, which is the same thing that led me to my current role, which most likely at some point will lead me to a different role. Right. And you got to be okay with that. It's really hard for most people because they see, and many of you, they're like, oh, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, we don't necessarily work in the same role for the next 30 years. You're going to change, you're going to adapt, but be okay with realizing you're going to come out a different person, and that's awesome. But build the knowledge, the skills, abilities, and the relationships, and you will get to the point where you can find that fulfilling careers that you want moving forward.
Absolutely. Whew, man, that was some crazy. That's a great 57 minutes, folks. That was awesome. 58 minutes. Zach, Ann, Kenya, Dr. G, I can't thank you enough for sharing this. I've learned something too. This is not just us giving knowledge away. I'm learning as well. I'm hoping you took something away from this too. And so with that said, with the last 2 minutes, I'm going to throw it over to our co-founder, Mr. Jeff Longo, to close us out and talk about next week's episode in the 5-part series this October.
Yeah, well, thank you to everybody. As Kevin said, I certainly learned a lot and enjoyed hearing from everybody's varied perspectives there. First thing is I'm glad that we are an educational webinar and not a sports talk show, because all that consensus there would not play well for the ratings. But I think it's really interesting if you look at the varied backgrounds and the varied pathways that everybody took to get to where they are right now. There are sort of these three or four habits and, mentalities that you can control that allow you to be successful and to get there. So, it's interesting. I always tell my students kind of the same thing. It's like your first job is to be awesome first, right? Polish up those 3 pillars that Dr. Grant talked about earlier, right? Do well in your school, work on your soft skills, right? Be personable, do all of those things. Then the second is you've done the hard part now. Now you just need to ask, right? So you got to kind of, put together a direct ask of somebody so that you can be specific. And then the third is, follow up appropriately, right? Relationships are not built in a day. They're built over the course of weeks, months, years. And again, all you guys did an amazing job of talking about all 3 of those points. And thank you for doing so. In closing, next week, week 3, we're again moving people along this journey, right? Last week we talked about how to find the right fit school. Today we talked about what to do once you get there. Next week we're going to talk a little bit about finding the right internship and figuring out how to apply the various things that you've learned. So our guest hosts are going to be Brett Bauer from Monumental Sports and Entertainment. Owners and operators of 6 professional teams, including the Caps, Mystics, and Wizards, and Mr. Roger Jones from Georgetown Athletics. So they're going to walk us through that program. And again, this is step 3. We're going to take you all the way through graduation. But both of these guys are super knowledgeable and super fun to listen to. So I'm excited for everything that they have to share with us next week. But again, thank you to everybody. That was absolutely amazing. You guys were great. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank
and Jeff,
you.
I'm gonna go. Thank you. Do I hit stop on the recording? Is that
stop the video first and then
Wait, hold on. I think some people in the chat were looking for our LinkedIn and contact information.
Oh.
Is there a way to share any of that? Maybe I don't know, through you, maybe we could just do that. I'm not really sure what works best.
Yeah, we'll share out the link of the video to all the registrants, and we'll add that LinkedIn information as well. And then we'll do the same once we post it on our YouTube channel for high school classes to continue to share, and college classes, etc.
Perfect.
Good.
That was great. Thanks, folks. I'm gonna stop recording here.